Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Programming in Access 2013. My name is Steve Bishop. Today we're going to be continuing our series on VBA, or Visual Basic for Applications. We're going to start kicking off some videos here that are going to be covering some pretty important objects and methods and functionality in Access that you're going to find yourself using very, very regularly. And the one we're going to cover today is the do command, or DoCmd. And DoCmd, do command, is a very, very handy shortcut to a lot of things that you're going to find yourself wanting to do for your users within your database. So I've got this example button here on my FRM employees form here. And the way you use the do command is just start off with DoCmd and you hit the period here. And you can see there are a lot of different methods that are available to the do command. And I am not going to go over every one of these. So I do want to show you how you can find out what each one of these do. If I select one here, just say for example the add menu method here, I can click on the add menu so that the cursor is now inside of the add menu method here. And if I press F1, I will get the MSDN article that explains information about that particular method. So here's the do command add menu method for access. And you'll see down here are different parameters that we have to have. There's the menu name, the menu macro name, and the status bar text. And each one of these fields are required. It takes a data type of a variant, and here's a description about each one of those parameters. You'll also have remarks down here, which gives you a pretty good detailed explanation of what the command does. And then usually you'll have something down here at the bottom that actually is an example of how to use that particular method. We don't have it for this particular one, but you'll find that very regularly you will have examples down there at the bottom of the page. Now you can do this for the methods on the do command object, but you can also go right to the do command object and hit F1 and do the same thing. And now you will see the do command is actually a property of the object called application. Okay, so here's some examples of how to use the do command. All right, so you can see this F1, hitting F1 on any one of these keywords, even private, for example. I can hit private, and that takes us to the MSDN article on private keyword. So very, very highly useful thing that you can do, just hitting F1 on any of these, and it will take you to the MSDN article on that particular keyword. All right, so I don't need the, wait for my application to catch back up here. I don't need the add menu. I'm going to go over beep. Now beep is something that is basically going to create a system beep to the user. And just as an example here, I'm going to save that. Go back to my form here. Click on the example, and hopefully you guys can hear that. We just have this beep, beep, beep going on in the background there. Okay, so that's what the do command.beep does. If I do command browse to, this is also very handy. The browse to allows us to browse back and forth from a form or to a form or to a report. So I'm going to go to a form here, and you can see we get the IntelliSense of what are the parameters that it needs. It needs to know the object type, which is AC browse to form. And this is what we call an enum, or an enumeration. AC browse to form is what I need to pass there. My next parameter is the object name, which is going to be FRM form, which is our calculation form that we were working on. I can also pass in the path to a subform control. So if I have a subform on the FRM form, I can specify a particular control to go to. I can include a where condition, a specific page, the data mode, etc., etc. I don't even need any of those, so I'm just going to go ahead and leave off all those optional parameters. And you'll see if I go to the browse to, you'll see that really the only parameters that are required here is the object type and the object name. Everything else is optional. See, it's required for those two. Everything else is optional. And here's that enumeration here that I'm talking about. A lot of these will have the link to explain to you what those different enumerations do. Open a form, open a report. So that's what those two are for. You can actually even use the direct value here for enumerations, value 2 or value 3. So if I want to open a form, I can just, instead of doing AC browse to form, I could actually just put in the value 2, and that'll do the same thing. So I'll show you this. I could just do this, 2, and that does exactly the same thing. Okay, but it's just helpful to actually have AC browse to form. It just gives you a little bit more, a nice, easy interface to understand a keyword, to know what it is that you're going to be doing. Now the browse to function, notice that we're in the FRM employees form, and when I go ahead and click on it, you'll notice that we're no longer in the FRM employees. It actually closes that form and opens up the FRM form for us. So you're closing the previous window and you're opening in the new one. All right? So that's a very handy tool for doing that, because there's actually another method that I'll get to later, which actually opens the new form and then closes the old one. And you may or may not want to do that. All right, so that is the browse to function. Let me go back to our code here. Next one I want to cover is, oh, and by the way, with the browse to, you're only really able to go to the form or a report. Those are really the only two things that you can go back and forth to with the browse to. All right, so you can't open a query, you can't open a table or anything like that. The next one is very, very common. It's the close function, or the close method. And you'll see we've got database properties. We can close the whatever the default is. We can close a diagram, a form, a function, a macro, module, query. So we're closing basically a window or a table or a form, or basically anything that we might have open. And I can actually leave all of those blank, because if I open up the MSDN article on the close, you'll find that actually even the object type and object name are optional. And what happens is, if you leave this blank, is it will close whatever the active form is. So right now, or I should say the active window. So right now the active window is FRM employees. When I click on the example button, you'll see that form closes. But let's say that I have another form open. I'm going to go ahead and do our, I'm going to do something, DoCmd open form. This is another one of the methods that are available to the do command. And I'm going to open up the form, FRM form. Now, what's going to happen is, because the close command is happening on whatever the active form is, what'll happen is the form called FRM form will open, and then the do command close will close it. So even though I'm running the close command on the FRM employees from the FRM employees window, because the active window is FRM form, it will go ahead and close it. So the end result is we just do this. Pretty much nothing. Looks like nothing happens. But what's actually happening is, in the background, the window FRM form is opening and then closing. So what we can do is we can provide some of those options. So instead, I want to specify, I want to close the AC form. The object name is FRM employees, and I'm going to leave that I'm going to leave that blank. I'm going to leave that for the default. So now we open up the FRM form and we close the FRM employees. So basically the same thing that we saw with the browse to. So that is very handy to know. That's something that you're going to obviously find yourself doing all the time, closing one window and opening another, or just simply opening one. All right, so that's the do command close. The next one we're going to do is the go to control, and you will find yourself needing to do this occasionally. First name. I've got a text box called txt first name that is on my form here. You'll see txt first name. So in the details of my continuous form, I've got first name a txt first name is a control. And what we're doing is we're essentially setting the focus of access to that specific control, but it's the control of the active window. So again, if I opened up the form, FRM form, and then I try to run this, let's see what happens. Notice we get a runtime error. There's no field name txt first name in the current record. That's because the current active form is FRM form, and I don't have a txt first name there. So I need to make sure that I don't open any other windows, or that I've at least set the FRM employees to be the active window when I run this go-to control. Okay? So now what this does is it's going to set the focus for me. So let's say I'm working on, I type something in here. Let's say I forget something. And I want in my code that when I type in, I left JDo blank. Let's say I screwed something up. I left something blank. What you can do is run that DoCmd go-to control, and you will see it goes and plops it over to that txt first name. So if I forgot the first name and I just moved on over here, so I'll say I forgot the first name, and when I go through and do my validation, I can actually automatically, I can pop up a little message that says, hey, idiot, you forgot your first name here, and it automatically puts the cursor in that on that particular text box so that they know this is the text box that they need to type something in. You will find yourself doing that a lot, especially trying to help dummy-proof a form, make sure that they've got everything filled out. You can kind of force them to go through and, you need to go to this text box if it's not already been filled out. All right, hope I explained that well enough here to move on. That's the go-to control, and then we got go-to record. And go-to record, you see I've got in a couple of different places here on my form. I've got the go-to record with the AC new rec. I'm leaving a couple of parameters blank here. Same thing with AC previous and AC next. Go ahead and delete that out so we don't get an error. And what we've got here is I've got some functionality that I'm basically stipulating to my user. So right now I can click on any one of these records, but I can also use these buttons down here to navigate. You can see how the arrow over here is going back and forth between my records, and that's essentially what the go-to record function does. Is it actually goes to the previous or to the next record on my continuous form. I've also got this one called AC new rec, and this is a little bit more complicated, and let me explain why. Kind of have to do some gyrations here to make this work for you, but a very typical setup here is, let's say when I've got my form first created, I'm going to allow additions, and you'll see that I'm allowing somebody to just come down here to this bottom line and just start typing in something. But let's say I don't want that. Let's say I want to make sure that in order for someone to type in a new employee, I want to force them to click on this new employee button to make that new employee. So the way we're going to do that is first we have to turn off the allow additions property. Set that to no, and you'll see that now it's not available. I can go in here and edit. So I can still go in here and edit the fields, okay? And just so you, FYI, if you want to, you can turn off allowing deletions, edits, and filters, okay? But for right now, I'm just going to go ahead and leave allow additions turned off. And the trouble is that now I can't add anything, right? So what the new employee button does is a few things. First, we've got to turn the allow additions back on. So we're setting the allow additions property on the form to true, and then we're issuing the go-to record with the AC new rec enumeration at the end there. And then we're setting the txt username value to a blank space. And this is because this txt username is a required field. It will not be allowed to be saved unless you put something in there that's at least of a certain length. And I'm just putting in blanks there so that it's just left empty. Then we can set the allow additions property back to false so that we take away that functionality again. And what we end up with is new employee. Okay, so that's a way that you can provide that type of functionality and really narrow it down that somebody has to click on that button in order for that to be available. All right, so moving on here. DoCmd. Next example is the hourglass. Hourglass, I can turn to true or I can turn it to false. That's really the only two things that you can do. It's a Boolean. I'm going to go ahead and set this to true. And then I'm going to go ahead and add another button here. And I'm going to call it button stop. And in here, I'm going to set the event, the on-click event. Let's go ahead and create DoCmd hourglass false. So when we click on the one button, we're setting hourglass to true. When we click on the other button, we're setting it to false. Let's see what happens. Oh, look at that. I've got the spinny wheel, right? Basically telling my user, hey, guess what? The application is thinking. Try not to do anything right now. All right, now I can right now, for example, I can change this. So Joe Lyons instead of Lion. And I still have full functionality of my computer, but it's kind of a way to indicate to the user, hey, the application is currently working. And a very common use of this is to set the hourglass to true before you run a big long code block that you expect is going to take, several seconds, maybe even a minute. If your application is going to do something pretty long and prolonged, you're going to want to set this circle to let them know I'm working. Don't do anything. And then you can turn it off. And you see my mouse is back to just the regular pointy, little pointy arrow there. All right. So you can set the DoCmd or the hourglass to true, and then you can set it to false later. All right. The next thing here we're going to cover is the maximize, and then there's also the minimize, and then there's the restore. So these three functions do what you probably already know they should be doing. Whatever the current window is, whatever the active window is, you can either maximize it, minimize it, or you can restore it, which are these buttons up here. This is the minimize button. This is the restore button, which just basically shrinks your page down to whatever the previous size was. And then, of course, we have maximize. So whatever the active window is, you can run the do command to either maximize it, minimize it, or set it to restore. All right? All right, the next one, there are a series of commands that are open. So we see open data access page, open diagram, open form, open function, open module, open query, open report, and open stored procedure, and open table. Oh, it looks like there's open view also. So you can open up a bunch of these different forms or queries or reports, and we'll go ahead and open up a report here. And this is very, very handy for, like if I want to open a report, I'm going to go ahead and open report 1. And a very common thing that I do is I open the report in preview mode. And this is that enumeration that I can select. I can go AC view design, layout, normal. Preview is very, very common for reports because that'll allow the user to actually see what it would look like when they print it before they say that they actually want to print it. I'm going to go ahead and leave everything else blank here and just show you. So there's my report open up in preview mode, in print preview, and they get the toolbar up here that they can select what they want to do. Maybe they want to export it to PDF, or they want to print it, or they want to change the margins or the size or whatever they want to do. They can do that from here, including the context menu that I can just right click and bring that up. All right, so that's obviously very handy. You want to provide that functionality to your users pretty frequently, and that's how you would do it. Go ahead and delete that button since we don't need it anymore. Don't want to get confused. So you can use, like I said, the open report. There's the open form, which we saw earlier when I was doing the open and closing. And you can also open tables. Okay, so there's a lot of open functions that are available, open methods that are available in the DoCmd. Next one we're going to do is the output to, and this one is very, very useful. You will find yourself using this a lot when you are trying to interact or give the user something to work with. AC output, I'm going to take that report that we were working on, that report 1, and I am going to output it as AC format PDF. All right, and I'm going to change it to, you know what, let me just make sure I've got test. There we go. Let me get rid of these here because I didn't blank those out before I went through it. Got to test this stuff out to make sure it works before I present it to you here. All right, so we're going to do test PDF, and auto start we're going to set to true. And what auto start does is it means that once I've saved this file, because what I'm essentially doing is I'm going to output a report called report 1 in the format of a PDF file, and I'm going to save that to test.pdf in my test folder. And then once I'm done saving it, I want to go ahead and open it. I'm going to set that value to true. And now, how great is that, huh? Right there is how you can save a report to PDF for your users. That's some really neat functionality that I'm sure you've really wanted to know how to do and access. And that's how you do it. You just make a button, and you can set up your output to, and output it as either a PDF file or another option here is, let's take AC output table. There it is. Output a table, and let's do table 1 employees. Output format is AC format XLS, and output file is going to be C:\test test.xls, because remember I deleted those before. Auto start will set to true again. And again, if you don't know what the AC formats are, unfortunately, I don't think the help information is all that great on this particular thing here. Let me see. And I see an AC format constant that specifies the output format. If you omit this argument, access prompts you for the output format. So you can actually not specify it, and it will ask you what kind of format. And that may be exactly how you want it to work. So, matter of fact, let me go ahead and do that. I will do there. And now it asks me, how do I want to output it? I want an Excel, a workbook, Excel, a binary workbook, a regular workbook, HTML, an old Excel spreadsheet, a PDF, rich text, text file, Excel. So we have a lot of different options here. I'm going to go ahead and select Excel. And, yes, bada bing, bada boom, there we go. There is the table that I had with all the information output as an Excel spreadsheet. That's pretty cool. I'm sure you probably got a boss or somebody that really wants to be able to do that somewhere down the line. All right, so enough with the output to. I think you guys get the hint there. All right. Next one is print out. I don't really want to go too much into this, but you can basically print out just about any screen. You can print a page. You can print a report. I really don't know enough about the printout, but I figured you guys might want to know it exists. This would obviously be where you can actually go in and do a print. Again, here I'm hitting F1. and I'm taking myself to take a look at what the parameters are, what it needs, print all pages, yada, yada, yada. Again, if you want to find out, just hit that F1 key and you guys can find out. There's an example of how to use it right there. All right. So that's print out. I hardly ever find myself doing that one. All right, quit. Quit is obviously a very, probably a self-explanatory one, okay? Maybe I can just show you. Do command, quit. Bye-bye. All right, we're out of the Access database. Obviously, if you want to have an exit button somewhere on your database, you would just issue a do command, quit. And there is an option on here. There is a parameter of whether or not you want to save everything that you've been working on. You can prompt, you can save all, or you can save none. All right. So that's the do command quit. Pretty self-explanatory. And then there is refresh record. And refresh record, and the next one I'm going to show you, which is requery, are two very similar functions. Refresh record, let me just type this out here. Refresh record is going to basically refresh your form. And sometimes you'll have a calculation that's in here. Like say for example a concatenation. Maybe the username gets automatically generated by some sort of calculation you put on this text field that takes the first initial and the full last name and combines it together to make the username. And you've got a calculation and some information changes on here, but the calculation doesn't process. If you hit that refresh, the refresh record, it's going to refresh that calculation for you. It just refreshes this whole form and makes it updated. Now, the other thing that happens, though, is sometimes the data behind this form will change. So I've got this data in my record source, which may have somebody change on it, right? I've got an addition to of somebody in here, but it's not showing up on the form. Well, the way you can handle that is if you do a requery. Whoops. Let me go back into my subroutine here. So you could do a refresh record or you could do a requery. Okay? And you can specify a specific control. So I'm just going to do me.name. And that would actually refresh the entire screen. That would refresh the entire form. But you can also specify a particular control, because sometimes combo boxes, remember those combo boxes had a row source, and maybe the row source has changed, and so you need to do a requery so that you can show the new row source. All right. So that's refresh record and requery. A really, really big one is the run command. And you can see that after I typed run command here, we get a long list of commands that are available. And I clearly don't have enough time to go through all of this with you, but AC command close. All right. AC command close is basically the same thing as if I did a do command close. Okay? These are exactly identical. What you're getting here with the run command function is essentially every option that's available on these menus, on this ribbon, is available using the AC run command. So everything you want to do up here, you can do through VBA using the run command. I hope that makes sense to you. Again, if you want to find out what each one of these are, you can just hit F1. And here you'll see we get the enumeration of all the different ones. And unfortunately, there's really no... I wish Microsoft provided some better information about how to do all of this. You could do a Bing or Google search if you wanted to on these commands and maybe get a little bit more information from maybe a site such as Access Forums or something like that. list of Microsoft ADT. Let's see, run command method. So here's a developer's reference for 2007. This is going to be the same thing. AC command constant is probably going to be the same thing. Yeah, you can, like I said, you can do some searching on your own to find out what each one of these does if you really need to know. I honestly don't use the run command very often, but I know a lot of people do, because it definitely provides a lot of functionality, a lot of access to all those functions that are available. You just kind of have to know which one it is that you want. All right, so moving on here. We've got run SQL, so RUN SQL. And run SQL is going to be something we'll probably get into a little bit later, because you can actually do stuff like an insert query, table 1, employees, and you can, I'm not going to complete this out, but essentially I'm building a SQL statement here as a string, and you can pass that string on to the run SQL method, and it will actually run a SQL query, similar to if I run one of these queries that we made here. Okay, so we could do a query like this if it was an append or an update or a make table query. You can actually go ahead and do that using the run SQL function. Again, I'm not going to get into that right now because we will be covering that at a later time. Next one is save. I think this one's probably pretty self-explanatory. Again, we're able to either work on the specific object that is currently active. So if we go into, let me close that out here. So this save button here, if I'm viewing it, it'd be essentially as if I went up here and clicked on the save button on the current active form. And then you can also specify through parameters a specific form or even a macro or anything really that you might be working on, a query or report. You can go ahead and save it using this DoCmd.save. All right. Pretty self-explanatory what save is. Then there is a very handy method called sendObject. The DoCmd send object allows us to send things like a report. So let's say I want to send a report, and the object name is report1. Output format is AC format PDF. I'm going to send this to, and no carbon copies, and subject is test, and messages test 1, 2, and 3. All right. So I'm actually going to send an object, which is going to open up my Outlook and send a report as an attachment, which is going to be report1 in the format of a PDF file. It's going to send it to my Gmail account and use test or test 1, 2, 3 as the body and subject. All right. So let's see what that looks like. So we got the report being saved as a PDF file. Got Outlook. I don't know if you can see that, but my Outlook is opening up here. We gotta wait a minute while my computer thinks. And my microphone, I think, is crackling a little bit too. Sorry for the poor audio here, folks, but so there's my report being attached as an attachment. It's being sent to that particular person with that subject and that message. Pretty neat, huh? That's really handy. There are other ways to work with Outlook other than just this. I don't know if we're going to get into that, at least in the basic series. We'll probably get into that into some of the more advanced videos. All right, we're getting towards the end here. Yes, I know it was canceled. All right. Make sure you've got some error handling just in case somebody decides not to actually send that object. All right, DoCmd show toolbar. This is a very, very popular one because if I don't want to display my ribbon anymore, I can use this command. The do command, show toolbar, ribbon is the name of the menu bar, and I'm saying no, I don't want to show it. And guess what happens? Bye-bye ribbon. Isn't that neat? So I can actually control the look of my access window right from within the VBA code. That is very, very important to do, especially when you want to protect the data that's in the background. You don't want people going in and editing things or being able to change things. Well, you can turn off the ribbon so that they don't have access to that ribbon. I do want it to be on, though, for right now for demonstration purposes. So I'm going to go ahead and run this again. Change that to yes and run it. And there we've got our ribbon back. Pretty neat, huh? All right. The last one we're going to talk about, and I have used this a total of my while I've been doing database work, I've used this a total of 2 times. Transfer database. I thought this might come in handy. You might like this, at least to know the functionalities here. I'm not going to go over it too much, but you can export, import, and link tables and forms and modules and yada 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 from other databases into your current database. So I can export, say for example I wanted to export to an access, and I don't even remember all of the functions here. I got to pull up F1 in order to remember them all here. But I've got to specify a database type, which the default is access, so I'll go ahead and leave that. And the database name, I don't even really know. I'm not going to go through all of this. If you want to learn more about how that works, you're welcome to hit F1. Type it in yourself and hit F1. But just know that what this does is it allows you to export, import, and link tables or reports or forms or queries from another database into your current database, which can be very, very handy, especially if you want to make a backup of your tables and such. If you want to export those tables, you can do this AC export command. So that's very, very handy. All right, well, if you have any questions about any of these, or if you want any more of these functions to be talked about that you think, hey, Steve, you didn't cover this one, and I think it's pretty important for us to understand, feel free to drop me a line, and I'll see what I can do.